Hello, hello. Just going live, coming from Beatles channel. Thought we'd fire up some action PC games, baseball, whatever, and walk through some tips on files, moving things around, whatever we want to talk about. I'm just taking a look, comparing some files here. Give folks a minute to come on over. Bears Den, hello, hello. Arnold is here. We're going to run through some Q&A tonight, I guess. Anybody that wants to see anything, go over some of the moving files around. I know we had some folks on Beatles channel a little bit ago that were asking some questions. I can say that after I've been looking at this beta file of the 2023 baseball history collection, I would encourage anybody that's an Action owner to get that file. If you're a baseball fan, there's a lot of great stuff on it, the way that they've organized some of the folders and I guess just how they have it cut out. I'll call it sliced up, right, to be able to do some fun projects with. So doing some exploring on that today. And again, as Beatles and I both say, if you don't know Action PC baseball, why not? What's the matter with you? Some good deals going on right now. I think on my list of things to cover here is going to be people that upgrade to a version and sometimes wonder, where the heck did my park data go? Because we have these new user mods here. Oh, user think. Hey, Beatles, welcome, welcome. Nathaniel's here. I'm looking over here, and I'll just kind of show you a manual way, because one of the questions that came up is, hey, I've done all this work on my parks, for example. So let me just pull up our Howie Shanks leaf, for example. So when you do all that work, um, Bernard, we're going to get into some cool things on how you can do it, and I'll show you exactly some of the cool things that we can do with it. But one of the tips I hear all the time is, or one of the questions I hear is, hey, I don't want to upgrade. What happened to my park layouts and all that? So as you can see in here, when you look at a team, say you set up your league or whatever, you can see here, we'll look at Big Clues team. We have an image assigned to it, and we have a park assigned to that team. So if we go up to modify team, you can see that we've got all their name information here, and we've got their home park and the year that we're going to use for the data, right? So the game would know that, okay, Jersey is assigned to Shibe Park, and then what picture are we going to use for it? So a lot of times you can have options. Let's go under ballparks. If you go under ballparks up here, there's two places you can go: layouts and data. Data is where you can go and look at each park. Let's pick Riverfront Stadium. Here we go. It'll tell you the years that it was active, right? So 1996, no data, because that would make sense. Then we can scroll down, and sometimes you might catch a typo in here if they've missed a year or something, and you can edit it yourself. But let's look at 1970 should be the first year that data exists. And let's see, 69, no, gone. Yeah, so 70, there's the first year. So if you've got your team, for example, assigned to 1970 Riverfront, here's the data for it. And you've got options right here for photos, right? Sometimes you can choose, hey, between these years, I want to use this photo. So you could pick 3 different eras here. If you had like an older version of Riverfront, whatever. This is a great way to be able to have that visual image kind of match what you want. The other thing you can do is take a look at whatever default. We've got Camden in here. So let's take a look at my pictures I have. So this will look at all the pictures you have in your DK Sports Data baseball ballparks. So let's take a look at Riverfront. Oh, and I know Beatles is going to, there we go, Riverfront. So let's say I want to use this as a night image. Okay, I could say that here's my night image. Here's a day image, and then here's an alternate, right? So there you go. So what the game will do is if I'm playing with the Reds that have this assigned to them, if it's a night game, it'll pull up my night image. If it's a day game, it'll pull up the day. But I can always go and edit whichever one I want it to visually show for me in the game. When we assign a park to a team and a picture to the park, here's where you find that information. So I'm going to open up where I keep the game folder, which should be under your program files, baseball 2023. This is where the executable file sits here. And also you'll see 3 things that are labeled about parks here. The first one is parks, and that parks information is the actual data for home runs, singles, lefty, righty, for every year for every park, right? That's pretty much, you don't really need to copy that over unless you've done your own editing, which I wouldn't advise unless you know what you're doing. Those pretty much stay the same. It just means they add the newest year onto that. So, when we came to 2023, they had the 2022 season data for all these parks. So that is probably something you don't need to mess with. The one thing that you need to look at is park user. And when I went in and assigned photos to specific parks and all that good stuff, that is housed in the park user file. So one thing you could do is you could just pull up your old game folder, baseball 21 or 2020, whatever you had. And if you already had those pictures assigned to certain parks, you can just go copy the one from your old one and overwrite it here to the new one and let that be your new parks user. Because that will have all the user assigned specifications to it. The other park thing that's really important is park layouts. So if we go back to the game, this is the one I think is the biggest pet peeve for people. Let's go into ballparks and layouts. This is where, I like to make this bigger, you get to set your ballpark chalkboard markers. Let's go pull one up I've got here. So here's Forbes Field. Let me find one where I've got it. Well, I don't have any set. Let me just find one that's set. Either way, doesn't really matter. This is where it has all your markers. So when you move them over, somebody always complains like, oh, I got the new version and all of my layouts aren't there. Well, you know what all you have to do? Come over to your old one, go into 2022 or 2021, and what you need to do is copy the park layouts and then drag that over to the 2023 and overwrite it. That's what has your markers in it. So this is a manual way to go and just grab those files and kind of understand what each of them has in them. Park layouts, probably the most important if you spent the time to set up your markers. Okay? I do believe there's an automated way, and I've never really even messed with it, to import right here, park information from previous game edition. So that was a manual way I did it for years, and now the game has put this in here. So you can say, hey, let me go previous game edition, and where do I want to go and find it, right? So I want to import park layouts, and I can go find wherever that, I don't have it on this computer, but if you had baseball 2021 or 2022, and you can tell it which one of those that you want to bring in, or if you want to just narrow down the factors. For most people, the general park info with the data in it and the park factors, probably you haven't messed with, I'm going to bet. unless you're real deep in the weeds. What you will want to bring over is the photo assignments that you have for each park and the layouts, so you don't have to redo the markers. So there's a manual way to do it yourself, and then they've got this new import feature, which is great for when you go from one version to the other. So not don't be afraid of that at all. I mean, the game's gotten better. There's always some ways you can manually get into folders and do stuff, but the game's gotten so much better with some of these import tools. And yeah, let it work for you. So, and speaking of photos, I've got a ton of them. The other thing is, I did it earlier on my broadcast, is player photos. So what'll happen is, and I notice MV does this, if you, under your rules, if you have a league, so here's our league right now. Now let me just pull up a season. Say I'm going to do a replay. Go down and pick a season. Here's 1946. I'm going to do a replay. I'll go up under rules, and let's see what I've got on. If I go to miscellaneous, I always get it in the wrong one. There it is, info. You'll notice that usually this box is unchecked, and this box is locate player photos in a subfolder. Because if we go into where all of the pictures and all that are stored, that will be in your DK Sports data folder. And if you have multiple games like I do, golf, hockey, they'll have those there. But DK Sports data baseball, you'll notice that's where you can keep your sounds, your logos, uniforms, player photos. So if I click on player photos, you can see all of the player photos that show here are in the main player photo folder. So if I don't check the subfolder box, the game just looks at this main folder. What these folders above up here are specific subfolders for those leagues. So you can see if I wanted to have a variety of photos just specific to 1968, right, which has every player from 68 with the proper uniform and all that, this is a cool way to do it. And many people that do replays, they want those year-specific photos. And you can go to some of the sites and download those. But to get them to show in a subfolder, you have to tell the game to look in the subfolder. So to do that, you come over here and you say, locate in subfolder. Now, watch what happens here. I don't have a 1946 that I've done before, right? So watch it. It's going to create a 1946 file right here as soon as I tell it that I want 1946 to have a subfolder. Save. Now we go up to my folders, and all of a sudden you'll notice right here is 1946. So if I had those photos, I could grab them and just drop them in this one. Don't have to do it that way, but this is really good if you want to have league-specific photos. I think MV, his approach is he just dumps all photos like you see that I've done in the past here into the main folder, and then he just goes into the game, hits rules, and then unchecks that box. Now it will just look in the general player photo. But I think they added this many, many years ago, but I think having that subfolder just allows more flexibility for custom leagues or people that do actual season replays. Fun stuff with that. So yeah, I don't know if I have permission to do this or not, but what the heck? I'm trying to help everybody learn about Action. I am beta testing. I've been a beta tester this year for the game, and I have the files for I can pull them up right here and give you a little peek here. I can tell you that these are some of the cool files, right? So you've got Panama, UK, Germany, Mexico. These are the files that have players based on the country they're from. Cool way to break down the all-time history one. The other one you can see is classic 70s, 60s, 80s, 1900s. These are really cool decade bests for each franchise, already pre-assembled, ready to go with the project. Then you have the normal folder if you just want to work with players that had at least a level of significant at bats or innings pitch, right? Here's a 500 minimum. Then there's the big daddy, I call it right here, uh, the master, which has every player that's ever played. So there's so many different ways to slice it up. So let's talk a little bit about what can you do with this folder. So I'm going to pull up the master right here, the brand new one. And you'll see with this is pretty much set up to be a overall file that you can import and draft players from. I love it because it's also really cool if you wanted to look at how they have each player rated on this file. If you go to check database, it'll only show you up to 5,000. I think there's a limit. This will take a while because there's every player that ever played. But one cool thing you can do is come up to organize and go for player search. And you don't even have to type the whole name, but let's say, I want Cobb. And just type 1B, it's going to give me Ocean. Here's Ty Cobb. So he's not assigned to a team. There are no teams in this league. It is just a pool with all the players in history as a free agent. So this is a great one if you could set up a league and then import players from this pool and select like what years and different things like that and set up a custom draft league. I know Beatles has done that. That's exactly what he did when he started the Ned McGreevy League. He brought in players from the baseball history collection. So here's Ty Cobb's card. Again, there's some information on the site about how they card them. They take the better a player and more seasons they had, I think they take a smaller peak. Whether it's 3 or 4, I don't know what, they got their own secret sauce on the slice they take. But in the all-time history file, you'll notice they're assigned to a neutral park. They've normalized the stats. So they've taken the park effects out and normalized them to a neutral park. And I believe they've done some era normalization too. Or they've normalized them to the year they assigned them, which would be 1915 here in a neutral park. I'd have to look. I think it says that as extra info when you go to buy the file. But it's just a blast, right? So here's Ty Cobb. You can see how he's rated. You can see it's got, for the seasons it's using, it's prorated out the fielding positions they played. It's given them ratings at that. Very, 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 very fun. Here's a cool feature that I loaded to just check for Beatles, because Beatles says, hey, are they bringing back those decade files? Well, I fired up the classic 70s, and this is what I get. I'm like, ooh, we've got a franchise from the 1970s. So let's take a look at these teams. So what you get are 32 players. Let's see if that's pretty consistent here. 32 players, yeah, 32 players for each. Let me put this on real stats. Each franchise in the 70s with players from that franchise with their peak card in there. So if you were too bored and you're like, hey, I've got this big file of free agents, I don't know how to draft or assemble them, and now I got to go grab all of them and put them on a team, you don't have to worry, because you could say, wow, I've already got a 1970 to 79 Boston all-time greats here. And you can see, here's Reggie Smith. He's assigned to 71 Fenway Park, right? Here's his batting line. Carl Yastrzemski, 1970, yeah. So pretty cool way to already have some fun projects to do. And the same is true for all the decades. So I just opened this up to see what we have. I think Beatles mentioned in the past they had like a 1930s greats decade team, but this one's even better because you've got all-time franchise team for each decade. So just with that alone, there's such playability in projects you can run all by itself. Pretty cool. And see what else we got. Let me pull up the. See which one I want to load in here. So let's install a season here. See what else we've got in here. So here you go. Here's an example of what I had from the 2022, right? So here's players that made their debut in the 1910s or 20s. I could load that in as a starting point, right? If I wanted to load in and do like World Classic teams, I could, players that were from Japan, USA, decade teams, franchise teams, and then the master, right? So there's just some really cool. Let me install decade teams. All right, so I guess I've got it. PB history. Take a look at franchise teams. Here we go. We can see the little wheel spinning. Sometimes these files are pretty big, so sometimes you sit and wait a little bit while it loads. I learned to be impatient. Yeah, and I see Mick's comment there that it looks like player best season with that decade file, which is interesting. Maybe I hit it twice. I put it into shock here. Anyway, fire any questions if anybody has them while we've got this thing up. If we want to take a look at. Here we go. Boom. So here's some all-time with all eras in here. So let's take a look at Hank Aaron. Interesting, interesting. And I think this might be a non-peak, right? So let's look at Murphy. It's neutral. He's an 84. Taking a look at these, and these look like they're probably not on a specific season, but on the peak slice. So there's just a ton of ways that you can use that file. If you want to do World Baseball Classic, look at players that come from different countries, uh, franchise by decades, or the actual history collection. One thing to make it a little bit more manageable would be to, instead of every player that ever played in history, maybe you want to limit it to people that had more significant playing time. So one of the files I think in here is, so all my Negro League stuff. What do we got? Baseball history. So you can select only players that have a minimum of 500 plate appearances and 200 innings pitched, or you can bump it up to at least 5,000 plate appearances, 500 game played, so on. So when you do that, it's a little bit smaller of a database to have to deal with. So a little bit quicker load times, and you're not going to have some of the lesser known players and so on. These will be more substantial players that had a little bit heftier career, which is probably at least 8+ seasons, 8 to 10 seasons. So this is a way to narrow down a file to work with. One of the cool things you can do with this is create some of the model leagues like we've done before, and bring and import some of these free agents from these different files into your model league that you're setting up, and you can pick which files and years and everything you bring the players in from, and then create your own draft pool. So as far as customizing leagues and that, pretty good file to have. for the price. I think now if you've owned one, 24 bucks. I think if you own a previous one, 95, it's pretty good. So you get a ton of playability with that as far as the amount of players and some of the teams it comes with. So a lot of replay value and project value, I think. So here we go. Again, on this one, we'll go into player search. Let's take a look at, let's see if this is the Aaron 1959 with 43 homers. Yeah, so the one that I showed a little while ago, they had the all-time great franchises in that. It was using the peak slices because this is what Aaron's rated at here in a neutral park. 43 homers, 338 average. Yeah, limitless. If you're willing to, and I know Beatles likes this too, if you're willing to dig in a little bit and walk through some of the tools on how to set up a league, which is pretty simple. I mean, let's walk through setting up a league. This is how easy it is. We can come up here to organize. Let's go. Utilities. I always have to look, and I never hit these for whatever reason. They're big, stare me in the face. I always go up to the top. So we can create a new blank league, right? Or a new draft league. So one of the cool things we can do is we hit new draft league. Now it's going to tell us what do we want to call it and what year do we want it set in. So let's pick 1975. We'll call it just going to call it Draft League 70s Test. The cool thing is you can say no team names, which means they'll create as many teams as you want and just call them team 1, 2, 3, 4, and you could add your custom names. So if you wanted to come up with your own unique names, you could. And you could also come in here and decide how many leagues you want, 1 or 2, how many divisions, all that good stuff. The cool thing about a draft league is you can also use existing teams. So I might say I want to import the teams from, let's use 1975. So I have all my stuff numbered here, 1975. So instead of just having team 1, 2, 3, and I get to put in the custom names, I'm just going to have them bring in the existing teams from there. Okay. Players, do I want none? I could do that, right? But since I want this to be a draft league, I say import players from an existing league. So, I can come in here now and bring in players from, let's see what we got. Let's bring in players from baseball history that have at least 5,000 at-bats, all that good stuff. So here we go. I want to use that pool of players. I want 2 leagues, AL and NL, right? 2 divisions in each, 8 teams in each. Oh, no, I don't have to. Look, I should pay attention. That only applies if I'm creating new teams. It lets me know which ones. I'm bringing in every team that was in 75, and we're going to keep the real name. So let's do it. Create league. Let it spin a minute because that's, new folder created. Let's take a look. So now I got a new league folder. So here we go. It's coming in, showing me the real life. The dreaded runtime. See what I just hit right there. Let's go to rosters. There should be nobody on the roster. Yeah, there's nobody on these rosters. So I don't know where that runtime came from. It's going to show from 1975 the real teams, and with it, if I click on it and look at it, it's bringing in their real life record from that year and their coach and all that good stuff, their park assignment. So now I've got all the real teams, they're blank, and I want to run a draft. So let's go up and draft. Let's set the eligibility rules. So I could choose, because I have this baseball all-time history collection, I could choose to say, I only want players from certain years. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, I don't want anybody pre that. So I want 1901 to 2023. I don't care about an age requirement. I don't care about minimum plate appearances or inning pitch because the file I brought in already has some pretty high bottoms on those. So this will keep those pre-1900 players out of this pool. So let's hit that. All right. And let's take a look at the draft order here. So let's modify the general managers. They are all on human. I can hit tools and say I want all of them to be computer. There they are. I could also go in here and up the tendency for focusing on certain types of things in a draft, but I'll leave that alone. I can come up here to draft, modify draft order. Let's see, what do we got? We can go with a draft order here first, randomize the draft order, and we're going to loop it. And we'll go rounds at 25. And there you go. And there's our random draft order. I could hit another one again. Let's see. And there it is. You'll notice it's looping now. So I've just set up a league, the model I want. I brought in a pool to draft players from. So we're going to have everybody on this history collection, at least with those bottom amount of plate appearances and all that good stuff. So let me go to modify general. I'm going to pick Detroit. I'll be Detroit and I'll change it to human so I can draft. Pretend I'm the Tigers here. So let's go into the draft and draft some players. 1,518 free agents found that meet that requirement between 1901 and current time and have at least 5,000 plate appearances and I think 2,000 innings pitched. So here we go. I can display batting, pitching. So what we can do is continue draft till it's my pick, which it is. And then I can, if I don't even know who to pick, I can say suggest. Computer's going to suggest George Mullen. I'm going to bet there's somebody better than that. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at who's out there. So we can cycle it here by batter. We can look at games right here. We can search by average, and you can see Hornsby's right up there, 389 hitter at second base. I mean, Babe Ruth's still out there. Why would the computer want me to take George Mullen? I got Ty Cobb here. OPS is a stat I love to look at. So we got Babe Ruth here looking good. So you know what? I think I'm going to go with Hornsby. Boom, I'm going to draft him. And then it'll just auto draft right up to my next pick. The other cool thing we can do here is we want to let the computer do everything. And I've seen Beatles do this. Let's go back to general managers and I'll say make all of them human or all computer. I'm sorry, all computer. And then we're going to say continue draft. And we'll just let it draft teams. And see what these teams look like from that history collection. And see how well the computer drafted 25 player teams. Yeah, that would be a cool thing, Greg, if you just thinking about it, like if people didn't want to manually draft, but they wanted to I know Beatles would up the speed. He loves speed on a team and some small ball. So he would, definitely bump that up to really focus on players that have speed and stolen bases and that. So it's really a cool feature if you don't want to manually draft, but you could put your own thumbprint on the team for sure. So let's take a look at my Tigers and see what that looks like. Well, let's see what they got on this all-time great file. Interesting players here. And what I'm interested in is to see how the computer manager does in trying to fill out positions and really cover logic around putting a team together, right? So it looks like they got 3 catchers here. First base is covered. Got Gil Hodges and Pete Rose who can play multiple positions. Hornsby's pretty much looks like my only second baseman, so they're really putting a lot on him. Rose can play everywhere. Fregosi and Orlando Cabrera, short. Max Carey, Torrey Hunter, Tony Gwynn. That's some good outfield. Clemente and Wright. I kind of like this team now. Pitchers, you can see game started. Looks like they did a good job. They went, I mean, this is good AI when I think back 10, 15 years with games to try to get an auto draft. You'd have weird things, right? But this looks good. This is a believable team. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5 main starters, a couple of swing people, and then real relievers on the team. So when I look at this, I'm like, yeah, pretty good computer manager approach. Let's look at Pittsburgh here and see what they've got. Same thing. They got 11 pitchers here. We can see same kind of breakdown. You've got your starters, and then you've got some relievers. There's Reggie. So right there, we just use the game, set up a model league, and then you can use the files that just have players as free agents, bring them into draft from. The other thing is you don't have to let the computer draft. You can handpick your players. So we could set up a league yourself, or you want to have one of your favorite teams, you could just create a team. And then when you're inside a team, anytime you're ever inside a roster, one of the options you have is to go up to players right here. You can create a player from scratch. You can draft a player if you've got people sitting in the free agent pool, which we do here. You can move them to other teams, or you can import. And it's giving me the warning, the league commissioner might get mad, but I can come in here, and then if any file you own, you could go to whatever, here's 1910, and I could look at team, each player on the team, or if I just want to look at the overall file, I could just say, display all players, doesn't matter the team, and then I can just scroll through alphabetically and say, who's there? In 1909, I wouldn't mind having, right? So the game's very friendly to be able to create with and import and edit and tweak and customize. You wouldn't have time to play anything else. Yeah. It does seem daunting if nobody's done it, but it's really not that bad because there's not much to tell, but there is, and that's the other thing. We've learned a lot in our recent league, and I hadn't been in a league in a while. But let's take a look at like a team here. And let's go back to my Detroit team. Here they are, right? So one of the things we learned is, okay, what about lineups? So if you'll look, I don't have any depth set, no bullpen or anything. So I can let the computer do some cool things here. So I can go under manager and hit my manager preferences. And this is where I can tweak how I want to manage, right? Like when I want to guard the lines, how aggressive I want to be on taking bases and stealing and pulling pitchers. I can also select over here if I want to sub for players. This is really important if you're trying to emulate, real life usage and you don't want a 200 at bat player, playing 500 at bats without getting tired. You've got some options here. You've also got the option to set different lineups and then advance for a little bit of customizing there, a little bit of nuance, right? So that way it's not always the same lineup. So a lot of power here. The one thing I will say is what we learned is when you run the computer manager, it's defaulting to real life usage. So it's pretty much going to look at like a file based on a regular season and try to set lineups to emulate how much playing time players really got. But if you're in an all-time draft league, you need to come over here, go to this preference, and you can say, I want it set on player quality. Because if we look at this right here, it's going to, let's go by at-bats, right? It might play somebody with more at-bats that's not as good of a hitter as, like, say, Hornsby at second or somebody else, right? So this looks at the overall player quality to put them in the lineup versus trying to emulate real life usage. So this is an important thing if you're in there trying to wonder why the manager does different things. Go here, set it to player quality, reset depth charts. Yes, let's do that. Yep. So now we've got it on player quality. The other thing you can do here is, so here we've got that, is go over to generate a default manager. And over here, you can tell it what you want to do. This is great to say, hey, I want pitching, position, pinch hitting, and create some lineups. And there we go. So here you go. So now it's done all that for you. So you can see it's got lineups laid out. It's laid out pinch hitters versus lefties and righties. It gave you a rotation with some spot starters. It gives you a bullpen. And if you don't like how it does, you can just go in here and edit it. So this is really a good starting point to take some of the heavy load. And then if you come in here and go, maybe I want to replace another player, you can always come over here and click and move players in if you don't like it. You can also set up daily starters, which is pretty cool, right? And here's depth. Then you can go through, here's catcher versus left and right, first base, all that good stuff. So there's so much to do. The other thing you can do with manager tendencies is go right to the player level. So let's click on Pete Rose here. You could double click on him and go this way and hit manager. So you can see all of the key data of what he's rated for, and then you hit manager, and this allows you to manage him specifically. Let's pull up a game and I'll show him the bet. Well, I guess I can show him outside of that too. So this is where you can really get into how you want them to use. So if you wanted to say, hey, Pete Rose versus lefties, I want him to bat third, versus righties, I want him to bat second, right? Boom, I could do that. Oh, I'm generating computer use. I can list that, and then I can go back and let it run the lineup creator, and it'll put that in here. So there's just so many things that you can get lost in the weeds trying to figure out how you want to manage the player. So a lot of optimizing here. Roster tool. Let's take a look at this. Under reports, there's a new one now called batter pitcher matchup. So let's take a look at that. This is something to get lost in. I love it. So let's say I'm Detroit and I'm the visitor and I'm going to go and play Pittsburgh. This is going to tell me, so it knows I'm going to be at Three Rivers. It's 1975. So this is going to tell me on my lineup right here. Let's go right here. I'm going to bat versus, who do I think's going up against me? So if I know Blyleven's going to pitch, I just select Blyleven, and it's telling me, it's showing me the batter pitch-up analysis for their data and taking into account the year and the stadium will be in on the road and those ballpark factors. It doesn't take into account game situation, right? Which some of these will change based on how many times through the order and the runners on and all that good stuff. But this is a nice snapshot into, wow, who should I start? Against Blyleven, you can see here some of these people have higher hit percentage. You can see their raw numbers here, but you can see that'll change. If I pick a different pitcher like Bunning, those numbers change. Same thing for my pitching. I'm going to be pitching against, who do I got to worry about in that lineup? Oh, against Boggs? Who's my best pitcher against Boggs, right? Probably Lidge. Brandon Lidge, 22% chance for a hit, or Wagner in my relievers. But of my starters, it might be Chesbro or Drysdale. So this is a new feature that came out in 2023. And yeah, this is real stats, Greg, on this one. It's using their real data that their cards based off to come up with this analysis. So it's fun stuff. You can also turn that on during gameplay and have that analysis show as well. All fun stuff. So yeah, so that file is endless. Endless fun with that. Trying to think what other goodies people might want to find out about or see. Internet play. Beatles and I'll get to use that this weekend for sure. Um, and here's reports, batter pitch up analysis. You can get to it from here, just like we did from inside the team roster. You could come here and fire it up. Another great one that is fun, especially in this one, because now, if you think about it, if we've imported players that were neutralized and drafted them onto 1975 teams in different parks. So under report, oh my gosh, I always forget where this is at. It's going to be reports league. Oh, Beatles, help me out. It's the what if. Oh my gosh, is it organized? Oh, I'm always forgetting. Yeah, wait, you can report on anything in here. Oh, right here. So report, and then you go look at players, and then one of the player reports you can get is what if. So this is going to be really cool, but with this kind of a league. So we're going to filter it to batting. Let's look at players, right? So these are free agents. I want to look at all teams. Okay. So here's what we've got. You can see if we look at the raw data, Bonds has the most home runs, right? We've got Hank Aaron with 43. All of these equal. So you've got what their real numbers are here on the left, and over on the right are the adjusted. So let's adjust them and see what their numbers look like if we move them around. So let's take up their raw numbers and let's go to Tiger Stadium for my team. In fact, let's just pull my team up. Take a look at my Detroit team right here. And let's see how they change. So I'm going to see what they look like in Tiger Stadium, which is where they'll be playing. Oh, it's Briggs. I always forget. It's Briggs/Tiger. And we're going to be in 1975 because that's when we created the league. We put them in 1975 American League. I hit refresh. Now let's go take a look at those Detroit batters. I knew which way I was going. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. All right. There we go. So here's my team right here. So you can see Tony Gwynn, his standard line, right? He's batting 353, 10 home runs. But I move him into Tiger Stadium. He's going to go from 10 to 12 home runs. And his average is going to go from 353 to 376 because I'm taking his normalized neutralized era and I'm going to put him in Tiger Stadium, which is going to help hitters. And this is where you can see the adjustment for how the game manages the cross era and so on. Pete Rose, who's on my team, 321. He's going to bump up to 343. Here's a player that goes down. So think about this. Hornsby, based on the years he's doing, he's a 389 hitter. He gets the opposite treatment. He's coming to an era that wasn't quite as hitter friendly, so he's going to see a drop. But his home run power is going to go up big time compared to when he put those numbers up. 27 home runs in the era he played in is big. Okay. Gene Tennis, yeah, he's the same 245 hitter, but guess what? He hit 18 home runs in a pitcher's park, which is Oakland Coliseum. We bring him into Tiger Stadium, he's going to put up 28. So this is another cool feature, the what if, to look at kind of behind the scenes or under the hood of how the game takes into account players moving from different eras and into different parks and how that affects their stat line. I could take Ted Williams and see how many home runs he'd hit if he played in Yankee Stadium. But yeah, let's see if we've got a Ted Williams in here. He's got to be on somebody's team, doesn't he? Well, I'm always going the wrong way. Where's Ted Williams here? Somebody, don't tell me somebody didn't draft Ted Williams. There he is. So here's Ted. Take a look at this. If we take Ted Williams, who's playing for Baltimore right here, 354 hitter with 33 home runs, we move him into Tiger Stadium in 1975. Ted Williams' anticipated line would be he gets less doubles, right? Because the Green Monster's not there, less triples, but his home runs almost double. His walks drop just a couple. Slugging percentage goes out the roof. Pitching too. Yes, let's take a look at pitching. View pitchers. Refresh. Oh, dun, dun. Just view all. And let's go batting. None. Pitching minimum 15. We're going to report pitching. So let's take a look at my Detroit team here. So here's Detroit. So I've got Brad Lidge, right? His normal lines gives up 6 homers, gives up a 205 to opponents. I move him into Tiger Stadium. He's going to actually do a little bit better. Let's look at Don Drysdale. He's going to give up a couple more home runs if I move him there. So I don't see anything too drastic here. This one's pretty big. Casey Patton, who gave up 5 home runs here for the White Sox. If we move him into Tiger Stadium, he's going to give up 29. So he's going to get pounded a little bit. So interesting to see how both batters and pitchers perform. Now here's Tom Seaver. He's going to get shelled a little bit. Now we could always change that and go to, I don't know, 1930 National League and put him in Shibe Park, and we can see they're probably going to get killed. Roger Clemens, he'll give up a little bit less home runs, but he'll give up a little bit higher batting average. So it's kind of interesting to see how those go around. Let me look at batters here too. In 1930, see some of these batters. Look at Carl. Let's look at Yaz. It'd be interesting to see. So we got Carl Yastrzemski here, 26 homers, 286. If we send him to Shibe Park in 1930, Yaz is going to hit 21 home runs. He's going to be a little bit less, but he's going to bat 367 compared to 286 because that was a super high batting average year. So yeah, this what you get lost in here if you love this kind of stuff. Yeah, Bernard, the manual. Hey, a couple cool things about the game. So if I go to where I have the game, let me go pull up my you'll notice the manual's right here. The manual does a really good job of explaining um, the basics of stuff, but there's no replacement for getting in there and just farting around with that, with the what if, right? It'll tell you about the what if tool, but it does a great job here of talking about the different facets of how to set things up, what's on the game screen, um, what all the options are in the game. It even goes into an appendix back here on what I think is really cool on how to run a draft league. So some of the things you'd have to know to run a draft league, right? It also goes on here, appendix on player ratings. So it'll tell you how the fielding range from 1 to 10 impacts the opposition's batting average and how it affects gameplay and what the drop offs are and so on. So really, the appendix section is really good for a variety of things. The player ratings is one. Explains some of the ratings that are there, what the pitcher ratings mean. Good tips on running a draft league here. Special topics, right? The EPC, estimated pitch count, fatigue, what it means. The pitcher stuff rating, which is pretty cool to add some variance to the game. That's explained here. Um, and good information right here on page 54 about the game engine, the batter pitcher impact, how park effects play, special eras, um, and just kind of how the game approaches that. Rare plays, how to set up internet games. So yeah, the manual does a really good job of explaining stuff. And baseball doesn't have the strategy, but the other games also come with a strategy guide to accompany um, the basic manual. So if I look in here under, so if I go to basketball, you'll see we've got the basketball manual, which will explain the game, but they also have a strategy guide. Football has this one too. And what this means is this really explains the strategy in game situations of what certain calls and what the risk and reward is, and the pro and con to having some of the different settings and playing defenses and offenses. Um, they can give you some, they'll even give some examples in here on um, what open is, what the percentages mean, and what smart plays are, how to call custom plays, fast break. So, and gameplay examples of what to look out for. So, on top of the manual, this strategy guide is really, if you want to really learn the game, this is a great walkthrough to really learn all the strategies and how they're used and how you can make sense of it and look at the pros and cons of everything. Football has a deep one as well. Yeah, yeah, baseball doesn't lend itself to strategy, right? I mean, I guess some of it, I guess, it's self-explanatory. But in the game manual, it does cover some, bits on there. You have the option to like guard the lines in the late innings, and when do you bring the infield in, and holding runners and things like that. So yeah, anybody got any other questions, man? It's always kind of fun to walk through these because every time I do it, I'm reminded of something or I learn something new. So you know what? We drafted this team. Let's set up an exhibition. Just run an exhibition game, see how it plays out. So we got Detroit. And what was the other one here? Let's go Pittsburgh at Detroit, since Beatles a Pittsburgh fan. And let's do a computer to computer. This is the other thing in the game. Let's go through some game options maybe for people that don't know. Before I hit play, I can do so much. So I can set up my, you'll see I've got it on full screen. I could change this to 3/4. I think Beatles once in a while will play on 3/4. You can see the difference there. I can change the size of the box, what windows I want to appear where, um, and really what I want to show out on the field. I can, display team records, a lot of, I guess, unique things you can do. Um, Fielding labels, if you want to have certain things. I like to have the last name, their fielding range, and throwing arm out there, but you could have fielding percentage, whatever you want. playing field photos, you could say, I just want to have the pitcher photo up there and the batter, none of the fielders. Well, you could just uncheck these. I like to have them on for everything, right? So many options here with the size, photos, all that good stuff. Video and sound, all customizable. I love to play with the video chalkboard on. I don't know. I mean, I just love it. I've come to just enjoy that movement. I tend to have mine really over to the fast side. It seems to work fine. I mean, you could slow it down. Sound effects, I like the in-game sound effects. We've played around with the narrator voices, and I don't have that Mark, the one I really like. I don't have that one installed on this desktop. But, you know, I played around with the narrator. I don't use it. Play-by-play, you can come over here, and I like to have maybe the home team bias. You can turn that off and on. You can have certain things you want to show. This is also where you could create your own custom play-by-play. So you can go in and edit the fields if you want to add flowery language or different verbiage, and then have different versions of play-by-play, like the stock one the game comes with, which is pretty good, or maybe a customized one you've done. And if you drop that in the main game folder, it will show if you've got different options here, as long as it's got that same extension on it, and you can have a custom one that you want to use. And I know some people in basketball, for example, have done some work on having customized text fields so that the play-by-play is a little bit more verbose and has variation in it. So a lot of stuff you can do here. Park image, again, this is where I could come in here for this game. It's defaulting to what's assigned to Tiger Stadium here, but I could, for this game, override it and show a different image. It's showing this one because it's day. It's a day game. But I could come over here and just find one just for this, right here, just for this game only if I wanted to have a different image show. Box score and reports, it lets you figure out how you want your box score to look. What do you want to track? All that good stuff. Miscellaneous, this is where you can go to pitch-by-pitch mode. We pretty much play in at-bat mode, but you could just say, hey, if the score is within one and it's after such and such inning or whatever, let's, you know, go to pitch-by-pitch. You can also toggle that on during gameplay, which is a cool option. You can change your era here. You want to do an average of the batter pitcher, or you want to do a cross era or pick a specific year. And here's the matchup analysis. So you can have that matchup analysis tool display different forms. You can have it display hit percentage and all that, or just average and on base and slugging. And you can say, when do we want that to come in? You can say, hey, I don't want to see that stuff until later. Great. I keep it on in the first inning because I like to look at it. So much you can tweak here to get it set up just how you like. So we can go human to human. Just hit computer lineup, opponent, computer lineup. There we go. It picked it. The player photos, I got some player photos in here for some of these that in my general folder, but let me take one thing I like to do is under display in the game, you can change your park layout if some of the markers are off. One of the things I do is you can see these player field photos. I'll just make them the main ones, no change. It'll shorten them down. And I could also make these player photos. I don't have all the photos for all of these since it's a quick draft league, but I could make those a little bit smaller if I wanted, or bigger. I can make them much smaller. There you go. So if you're playing and you want to human control like we do in our league, one of the cool ways you can play along, you can see we're in at-bat mode here. I can toggle that. Now I go to pitch mode. So it'll be pitch by pitch, or I can just say, let me just do at-bat mode. You come over here to computer, and if you don't want to make the call for and pitch for the pitcher, you can sit here and just say, hey, computer, the pitcher, computer, the batter, and then the computer will run everything for you. So if you want to sit back and watch a game, this is a great way to play it right here. Just tell them the computer to handle the decisions for, here's the pitching screen that comes up, let the computer decide what they're going to do, and go for it. The other thing you can do is always come to options and change that and say, okay, I'm going to be Detroit. Computer, you take over Pittsburgh. And you can always go back up there and change that under options. And here we go. And then the other cool thing, I show this, we go to quick. There's the zoom option. Here's what I like quick too. Let's go to 3/4 screen. Boom. This is what 3/4 looks like. You get a smaller view of the field, but you get a different layout where you've got, you know, the batter pitcher info. You've got your decision box. You've got lineups. It puts the pictures in different areas. So I used to play almost 100% on 3/4. And I liked it. It's just comfortable for me. Then I got to where I'm putting my photo packs in and doing all this fun stuff. And then it's like, wow, well, maybe I want to use more of the screen. So I can always go up to quick and just say, let's hit this back to, where is it? 3/4, yeah, switch to full screen. Boom, so now I'm back to full screen. So we can do that. Another cool thing, you can fast forward. So we got zoom options here. I can zoom to certain situations when there's a pitching change or a runner. Or I could just pick the actual inning. And this is what I like. Let's go to the 7th inning, see what's going on. So I come over here. I'll say I'm going to zoom, and the zoom is complete. And here we go. Now we've zoomed to the 7th inning. The computer took care of everything, and I got a 5-2 game. I'm down 5-2. And if I get to the point, I'm just like, okay, seen enough of this game. I can always come right up here and say, preferences. Let's just go computer, play it. Let's finish it out. Now it's done. And here's the box score. You can change some of the font size here on the box score, things like that. This is the kind of the game box score. I like this because it's in different categories. You can look at pitching, miscellaneous. You can look at the score sheets. And then this is a great recap for some of the significant things that happened during the game. Play-by-play, you can go back and see. But if you wanted to see a different one, go to game preferences, box score. You don't have to, you could do simple text there. Trying to think what else they have here. Don't mess with this. Oh, reports. Traditional, right? Or do you want it document style or HTML? So I can say report HTML. Okay. Let's hit an exhibition game here. Computer versus computer. This would let me save it. I'm trying to figure out how to get the standard one up because I was messing with this the other day and I thought, hey, this is different. Computer, San Francisco against San Francisco. Cool. Now I'll have to look at what I was trying to do. I'm trying to change the, make it look like the old school kind of box report, which you can print out, which is interesting. Yeah, the zoom is really cool. It's a really cool feature in the game. So yeah, the game's so deep. I mean, for league play, we're doing the Shanks League where we're not really playing head to head. The head to head's a whole other thing. So if anybody wants to tune in this weekend, all we need to do is have, hey, D. Scott, we need Beatles to let me know when it's going to happen here tomorrow evening or Sunday sometime. We'll get on it. We haven't done a head-to-head in a while, but head-to-head is a blast. And it's a matter of just setting up a Hamachi account and then going into the Action PC lobby, because it eliminates the issue of firewalls and being able to connect. But head-to-head's a blast. It's a great game for leagues, great game for solo play, great game for season replay, great game for what ifs and homebrewing. I do so much homebrewing and creating players and all that good stuff. It's fun. So take a look at a roster, some of the things you can do with a roster. Here's Cal Ripken. I can right click on him and hit modify, and that pulls up a lot of stuff that I can modify. So you can see there's player notes here about some of his achievements. It's got the year. It's missing a uniform number. I could put that in, height and weight, a nickname if I wanted to have a nickname for him, and this would let me edit his availability and some of that good stuff there. The other thing I could do for Cal Ripken is I come down here and say, edit his statistics. Do I want to go real or his replay? Let's take a look at his real statistics. So this will pull up his card where you can see all of the data that's been inputted for him on his ratings, shows his overall games, run scored, all that, his at bats, and then his lefty, and then it automatically shows you the righty splits, all the fielding information here for the positions he's rated at. The other cool thing you can get into is if you're trying to create what if seasons or, like, let's say lesser leagues, you can come over here and say create stats based on attributes. So if you don't have any of the raw data to rate a player or a high school team or something, you could come over here and start messing with this and give them some ratings, and it will spit out the data, the stat data it needs to create the player card. Pretty cool. Oh, head-to-head is a blast, Greg. Head-to-head is really fun. Believe it or not, games need to work with an OOTB. And yeah, it is. It really is. I think, like Bernard was saying, it is, a lot of times people get intimidated. Oh, how to create left and right splits. Here's what we do. So I'll show you how cool this is. Well, cool. It's a little tedious, but if you're into it, here's what you do. I'm going to create a new test league. And that's a cool thing too. You can always go up here, utilities, and if you wanted to make a backup of a league you're working on, you could say, create a new league or back up the current database, right? I'm just going to create a blank league. Call it player creation here, so we can walk through that. And you can see my recent leagues. I can go back and forth to the ones I've used. There's that 70s draft league we were just in. Easy to switch back and forth to leagues. Player creation, so I don't have any teams. So here's what we can do. I can go right here to teams, and let's create new teams. How many do I want to create in which divisions? Let's just create one team. Create it. Here it is. I can go into that team and modify it, and we'll call it, give it a name here. And where do I want this to be? Well, let's just pick Riverfront. Let's say it's going to be Riverfront 1973. So I'm going to assign the team to that park. Yep. And assign the team 1973 National League. Give it an abbreviation, pick the time zone, whatever you want. So this is where you can get in and just create your own teams in a draft league, fun projects, whatever you want. So that's done. So I've got the Utah Stars. Now I want to get some players. So there's two ways you can go about this. I can get a player and just say create. And it's okay. What are we going to do here? So I can create them from scratch. First name, Joe Smith. Short name is Smith. Right. He's, 22, 1973. This is probably a carryover. Doesn't mean anything. Put a uniform number in there. And hit save, right? So that's his basic information. Now, if I want to do something with this, I can come up there, and the easiest way to add stats is this way. Edit general. So if we go to general, you'll see there's his name. It's got some of his jump and hold ratings, but you can go to edit batting, edit real, and it just pulls up. So here we go. 500 at bats, and it's very manual. And I've done a lot of this, trust me. And there you go. If I had all that raw data, which we get off Baseball Reference, there's their batting line. So now let's go in and edit fielding, edit real fielding, and we pick what positions does he play. Well, second base. Let's just, say there was 100 games at, second base, whatever. What's their range on a 1 to 10? I'll make Joe Smith a good fielder as double play pivot. Maybe he played a few games at third base. On air. No triple plays, and he's a 4 there, right? That's how you could do it from scratch. So now he's got all the ratings. We don't have to do pitching, but let's go batting versus left. You hit batting versus left, it automatically, when you create any new player and put in their original data, it automatically uses historical averages to give them split data. So you would never have to enter that unless you wanted specific data. So let's say I went to Baseball Reference or Retro Sheet and I got their real data. Then I could come in here, and if I had a bunch of players, I can clear it. Okay. Yep, I want to clear what these are estimated and put in the real one. So maybe there was only, whatever that is. Boom, save. So now when I click on him as a card, you'll be able to see it's got his righty and then the lefty split out, and I put all that information in. So the cool thing about creating players, if you don't want to put in specific lefty righty information, the game has to have it. So when you create their main line, it automatically does the estimated for you. No reason to do an estimation. That's convenient. Very convenient. So the only thing really is if you got the real stuff, put in the real stuff. Tedious, but I do it for some of my projects. Another thing you can do if you're creating players, call it a shortcut. If you own a lot of seasons like I do, I could always come in here and import them. So under players, instead of creating, I could say, hey, I want to import them. And then I could choose any action file I own. So I could say, oh, okay, I want to import some players from 1920. I can look per team if I wanted to go find them, right? Or I could put it on all players. Here's Detroit. Oh, there's Ty Cobb. Maybe I want Cobb and Heilman. Select both of them, import. Good. Go to another season, 1931. I want some more Detroit players. Oh, I got Charlie Gehringer. How about Marv Owen? Tommy Bridges. Import those. So that's how easy it is if you're trying to build a team by just going season by season. Any file that you owned, right? You could go into any of those and look for a player and import them in. And when they come in, there they are. So now we're building a roster by doing that. I do this a lot of times as a shortcut because if I'm doing an all-time greats, I will import the player from the specific year if I own it. Then when I go here, let's say I'd import, I'm going to get rid of this Joe Smith. He's not real. So I can just delete him. So let's say I'm creating an all-time Tigers team and I have my own data I've crunched, like their best peak years or whatever. Then what I would do here is I just come in to edit batting, and I don't want that specific year. I'll just clear the spreadsheet, clear all the batting, done. And then now they're zeroed out, right? And then I would go back into batting and start editing from my sheet, which That's my basketball one. But I have a baseball sheet that will, have my data, and I have it laid out in what the game would need. So if I open up my many of my baseball, I think this is it. Oh yeah, here we go. I could come over here and hit my data for whatever Tiger team, and I input it manually. They have a spreadsheet you can export and try to fill it all in. I'm just too lazy to figure it out. I just come in there and I'll minimize this, and right here, and away I go. Boom. Well, I actually minimize the screen so it doesn't overwrite each other. And then I'll just manually enter the batting data. Then if I have the left, right, I'll enter that. And then I'll go over to fielding and enter the specific real fielding numbers in, because if these were from that season, I can clear all that out and enter the edited stuff that I'm going to put in there. So two ways to do it: create them from scratch or import the player and then tweak it and edit it. But there's a lot of manual stuff there. Um, if you want to get in there and do your own editing. And that's why I love the game so much, because I spend so much time doing the what ifs. I don't know any other game that they offer that lets you get under the under the hood and start editing. All right, Nathaniel, feel free, yeah, hit me up and watch it when you buy the game. And I mean, heck, what were I saying earlier? The game's a good deal right now. I'd just take the plunge and spend the $100, because if you spend 100, you get 20% off with them. So your $100 purchase you could get for $80. That's just one of the best deals going on right now. And right here at the fan shop, you can take a look at the baseball game. It's on sale. Like if you wanted the deluxe classic with last season plus 9, so look at this, for $55, it's going to give you these seasons right here. You're going to get the all-time top 20 teams, which is cool, but you're going to get a Negro League season, an 1890, 38, 69, and then the last 5 of the most recent seasons. That's a pretty good value for 55. But they also offer other packages if you're not interested in that, where you could just get the basic game and $31. Now, I think it only comes with, yeah, the basic game for that low price just comes with the top, like a 20 all-time greats team. But like if you weren't interested in doing current teams, you could buy this and then get that history collection, and you're on your way to having some fun. But because they're so generous with that discount, I've always been tempted to I always want to spend 100, because if I do, I get 20% off. It's like, oh my gosh, I gotta, and pick some cool files that you can go with. And here's the deluxe. So this was deluxe plus 9. I don't think this is pretty good one. Deluxe plus 5. That's a pretty good one there for $39. You can get last year's season, 69, 38, a Negro League season in 1890, and then the top 20. You're playing baseball. And then the baseball seasons, special collections, right now, $34. So then you're like, oh, I'm going to get the game for $40, this for 34. Heck, I got to spend another 25 somewhere. And then you can get in here and look at all the other cool stuff they have. They have this one here, which is just a file that has all Hall of Famers based on one of their great seasons. That's a pretty neat file. The 160 greatest teams, baseball by the state that I think Beatles showed earlier, franchise all-stars. There's some cool stuff to get. Classic decades. Complete decades is another great deal. That's a way to run your bill up and get your discount for sure. At 20% discount is just too much of an advantage. Yeah, the sale will pull you in. Oh, custom reports. Oh, so Greg wants to see some custom reports. You can do it. Let's pull up baseball. So if we go to your database right here, you can search this however you want. Um, when you go under layout, you go under layout, you can create all the custom reports you want right here. Some can't be modified. So if you look at all of these, 1 through 46 are already, um, wait a second, 1 through 46 have already been built, right? They're already great, you know, like the Macmillan style or whatever report you have here. You can create anything beyond 46. It's got a no name now, but you could click on it and say, gosh, what do I want to look at here? And here's the available columns. So you can look in batting, you can look at all the things that you can choose to put on that report, and you could add all these different fields. So you can have a field day here and come up with your own custom reports. I did that for basketball because I was just wanting to see 3-point shooting alone. So in the basketball game, what I did is under database, I created my own that they didn't have here, which was just called 3-point. Because I was running some tests to see how the game did, estimating 3-point for players that were played before the 3-point era, and it does a great job. And this let me come through, and this is showing real, but this let me come through and take a look at my replay stats. So let me go to, well, I'll just leave that alone. Anyway, you can come in here and make all the custom reports you want. What? Give me an example, Greg, what you're talking about. I'm not sure I understand the rate stats. I think I know, but I know the basketball game has a lot of rate. If I think it is what you're talking about, like rate per minute and per game. And as I walk to the fridge to get a cold beverage here, let me see what we got going on. Um, what else can we look at here? So yeah, I have some fun with some of my what ifs. I don't know, some of you, I don't know if Nathaniel, I'm calling him Nate, I wouldn't even know if he goes by Nate. Nathaniel and Greg are here. One of the files I have, and somebody was asking, I can't remember who it was earlier, about my 5-year franchise files. And those are all, see, I think column the most recent ones are right here for the AL. And I have to have an AL and NL because they only allow basketball. You can have a ton of teams on a file. In baseball, they only allow 80 teams per, or don't they upped it, I think. So here's that file, but these were all hand created, custom edited, crunching the numbers. It's based on a 5-year run for a franchise, which stands out, right? Like a good 5-year run. And then I carded the players. They had to play at least 2 years in a row. And I took their best 2 years in a row and averaged them and carded them that way during that 5-year run. So if we look at this, you'll notice they don't look like typical. Let's pick one here. Oh, well, how about New York 27-31 Yankees? You'll notice you'd expect to see, oh, where's Ruth's line from 1927? No, this would be, I can probably tell you. I signed it, and then I would assign them to the year of the 2 in a row they had where they had the most at bats or innings pitched. So he's probably using 26 and 27, or either that or 27 and 28. So this was a lot of work just to get the custom card created for the player. Then I was putting the photo packs. I've had some players inquire, um, wanting the photos, but it's like, oh gosh, I probably don't even have maybe half the teams done that I have photos for. And then, I was doing a lot of the custom colors and the logo for that. And then I got into putting the uniform. The other thing you can do with these teams, when you go to modify them, if you've got manager photos, you can see I've got a manager photo here. If you download from some of the community sites the different uniforms, here's where you would drop these in your, go to the DK Sports folder right here. So you'll see under baseball, you have all these folders. You can drop your player photos here, ballpark photos here, your seasons, of course, sounds, and then here's team logos and uniforms. So this is where you drop all the different uniform options you have or team logos. And then when you're in the game wanting to assign them, you just go right here and you can see, then you can search through all the logos you have and pick the one you want. Dresses it up. I have not done any custom stadium sounds or victory songs. Maybe those are coming. I have downloaded some sounds that could be used, but all right, enough of that. So there, I call this window dressing, but I just really started saying, hey, I just want to dress the game up. I hadn't spent a lot of time on the uniforms and all that. It just kind of makes the game look nice. And the photos. Some of these older teams I don't have for them. A lot of the mid 80s and 70s team I have photos for. So I have so many projects going on, I get sidetracked. And then I took a different approach with the Howie Shanks League of making a more standard photo for the Negro League players and that. So even with my basketball project now, I'm trying to, as I go along and bring the players in, create the photos, because when it's all done, it would be nice to have a finished product where you can share the file, which I'm happy to share this and do. But I know a lot of people say, hey, you've got some can I get all the photos? It's like, oh, I don't have them for every team. So hopefully someday I'll put a bow on all of these projects and they'll be there. Cool. Yeah. So Greg, the one thing I have noticed with this outcome box is the first time I've seen action go to that percentage of what he's talking about, K percentage and things like that. So, if we start looking at who they might face, right? That's where you're starting to see some of the hit percentage, and it'll show on the outcome box in the game. I also think under, let's check a roster here. Well, look at this A's team I created, the 48-52. Sometimes I forget I created some of these interesting teams that maybe weren't great, but have a cool 5-year run. Yeah, so you'll get some of the percentages this way, like on slugging and opposite. Gosh, I thought usage, bio, notes. Gives you kind of some of the team leaders here. Man, one of my, let's go, you got me thinking here. Let's go to the database and take a look at a report. This is a big file too, got a lot of teams on it, so it takes a while to load. So let's take a look at layout. Go down to one that they'll let me change. Say we're going to create a custom one here, number 49. And you got a good point. I'm looking here to see if it would give me an option to just display like percentage. The game will do it in the analysis box. but that seems to be the only place we can get that first base, second base. It'll give you in the game for the batter pitcher matchup, and then I guess you can get it by looking at the team through the analysis tool. But I thought maybe we could come over here and take a look at it and see if it would show us that um, as a batting option, but I don't see a percentage. A lot of these don't make sense unless you're looking at replay stats, like right home runs with runners in scoring position, stuff like that. Now let's take a look at a player card to see if there's anything that would be tracked percentage-wise during a season. Nothing I see that breaks down the percentage except right here. Let's take a look at Detroit 38. Yeah, we're not going to see that until it matches it up against a pitcher. And I can look at averages or that hit percentage. Yeah, it's going to make me pick a team. Yep. Then it's going to want me to specific pitcher. Yeah, it's the only way I can get it. There's no general percentage breakdown. Hey, maybe that's an upgrade, Greg, for headquarters. A toggle in the roster screen. We can see like batting. I like this average versus left and right because I use OPS a lot. Like if you're setting lineups, real versus replay is really a cool one. But yeah, maybe under here, under batters, when we look at their line, another way to look at that would be another screen that breaks down those percentages like from the analysis tool. There's an upgrade we can talk to him about. Yeah, ground ball, double play rates, things like that. That would be cool, especially in like to look back in a replay is what I'm thinking of. Just take a look at a picture. There are some cool things like after you play a season out. In fact, let's pull up our Shanks League because we've got a lot of games played in that one. Take a look at that one right here. And what's neat, this one thing I love about the game, and again, history with me, I started off Status Pro, fast action cards. That was my go-to. Then in college, Lance Hafner. That was full count. Well, we had the football and then the basketball games first, but in '86, we got that full count baseball, and we were like, oh man, this is great. Then of course, we had micro league and Earl Weaver and hardball, some of the stuff we played '86ish. But my buddy Jerry ended up getting the very first iteration of Pursue the Pennant, which became Diamond Mine later, where you didn't even have a computer manager. It was just human versus human. It was their first computer game. This is about '87 to '88, right around there. And he got that, and I said, "This is cool." And then about a year or two later, it was Diamond Mine, not Pursue the Pennant. And I was with Diamond Mine for years, from what 90 probably all the way until probably for 12 years, until 12 13 years, until baseball came out, I think about 2003 or 4, when I got Action Baseball. And then I slowly never went back. It mixed in there in the 90s was also Baseball for Windows. I had that, and I had the seasons it came with. Beatles will remember this. I had the 1971 season it came with, and I loved the heck out of that. I played that '71 season, the Tigers, loved it. Um, And then another game we got into, gosh, this is later in the late 80s, was early 90s. I mean, it was, oh, what is it? Old time baseball. Oh man, that was great. But I'm telling you, I bought a recent version last year of Diamond Mine. Tried playing it again. I'm like, oh, I can't play this. This was so cool back then because it was the king of the hill, especially when they came out where you could auto put in a player and it would bring in their basic information. When I was creating players, I loved it because I'd have Total Baseball in my Macmillan encyclopedia, and they right near the end there, they came a deal where you could like hit Dave Concepcion and it would bring his basic info in, and then I could um, put in his data. Then they came out where they started putting the splits in. So I did a lot of the manual splits and got some of the seasons that they had put split data in for. And then when they went into what is it, Simnasium and whatever they are now, the online thing, I was like, I did that for a couple years in leagues, but um, yeah, I've always come back to this game because it gives me the what if stuff. I just love doing the home brewing and a lot of that. And the other thing I love about it is this. So we've played a bunch of games here, and I am excited because I'm now a game in front of Clue, and he had me down by a game, but we'll see how that holds up. But we take a look. The replay is great because if I go into my Detroit team, here's real stats. Let's go to replay. Here's what I love. I can go in here. Let's look at Mark McGwire, who I have. And I have all this great data. I can see what the real life card was, right? Now, of course, this league is crazy because we have greats from all over, and but it's cool stuff. Here's all the data for runners in scoring position right here. Um, yeah, clutch situation, home, road, day, night, by month, multi-hit games. Um, Odd that Mark McGwire doesn't have a multi-home run, but oh well. Longest home run, that's a cool feature, 416 footer. His longest hit streak, how many game MVP. So, and then his high for all these categories, and then what the number was and the date and who it was. The other cool thing is if I look at this, like, oh, his high plate appearances was right here. I just click on it and it pulls up that box score from the game that he did that. User friendly, tons of data to get to, and when you're looking at um, stuff, it's really cool. Batting, real versus replay, line by line. It's pretty cool. So you can see how many they played games in real life for the replay, at bats for the replay, to kind of track how they're doing. So I just love the game play. The depth, the reporting is crazy. And this is one of my favorite views when you're playing and you can just click on a player's card and look at all this data neatly and then track like what they're doing in the replay. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the game. I think Diamond Mine has a great engine. I mean, I always loved the gameplay and the realistic results and all that, but I'm so used to action now with the visuals and the chalkboard that it just doesn't do much for me. And there was a time that was my life, DMB. Yeah, it might have been 91, 92. I'm trying to remember where I lived then. The first, I'm telling you, my buddy Jerry, this had to be, see, when did I get married? 89. It had to be 88 to 89, right before I got married, where he's the first person I saw that had a laptop, by the way. And he had it was called Pursue the Pennant digital game. And it was Pursue the Pennant for maybe a year. And then it moved over to Diamond Mine. And we had, I think, right before we were getting out of college, we had the Pursue the Pennant that ended up becoming, what is it now, Dynasty League, but it was the box, the old cards and dice game, the player cards. Yeah, Richard Dombrov used to be real big in the action. You'll see some similarities with some of the stuff he did from action. I think there was some inspiration there along with the other game, but He used to be really active in the early 2000s on the action forums. But yeah, love it. I'm liking Hank Aaron here. He's playing real good for me right here. I'm looking at him. He's doing pretty good in the repo. A lot of people underperform. So a lot of cool reports on this. And then, of course, if your league's going on, you can always go up here to league reporting. See what we got here. Injuries. What's going on with current injuries? Let's see who's hurt in the league. Well, Beatles, Ty Cobb is out for another week with a shoulder injury. I'm sure you know that. George Brett broke his ankle. That's a big one there for Clue and his Jersey team. It's kind of fun to look at some of that stuff. But yeah, tons of reports here. We've got, oh, let's look at hitting streaks. Current streak, Babe Ruth on an 18 game, but so far in the season, we've had 3 24 game hit streaks. That's pretty good. And then games, then we can go for game recaps or we can go box score searches, which are cool. So let's see if we've got any cool box scores. Now, how do I do this? Now I got to put my brain that meet all minimum. So how about 9 innings pitched? Zero hits. Looking at all 680 box scores we have. Oh, I don't know if anybody knows this in the league, but check this out. We just found that the league had a no hitter. So this is a cool way to put in some criteria and look at all the game box scores to try to look for stuff. So let's take a look at that game. Louis Tiant pitched a no hitter. Did anybody even know that? Does anybody in the league know that? It's pretty cool. Arlington got whooped. So hey, Badlands has the only no hitter for Louis Tiant in the league. So it's a cool way to look at that. No doubt there's got to be one hitter. So if we go pitch 9 innings and only give up 1 hit, there's got to be some one hitters. Mm. Everybody's tearing up Arlington, I guess. So Wright has 2 one hitters. Funny in this league. So we've had a no hitter and 2 one hitters. Uh, how about 9 innings pitched? Anybody have 15 strikeouts or more? Ooh. Dwight Gooden strikes out 15 against Arlington. Boy, Arlington's taken a beating, huh? And here Tiant is. So that's the high in strikeout. So this is a fun piece right here that you can get into a little tool and look at all this stuff. Yeah, I might have to bring that up on a broadcast or something here this weekend, Beatles. That I don't know how often we use it. It's fun when you have a league because then you can go look through all of your box scores looking for some pretty cool things. How about batting? Let's get rid of these. We could say batting minimum 3 home runs. Any 3 home run games? No. 2 home run games? Oh, it's got to be. Hmm. let's say 5 RBI games. What am I? Maybe I'm not. Oh, never mind. Let's get rid of that. Now let's go. I had that. It's looking for 9 innings pitched too. That isn't going to happen. Well, now let's look for 3 home run games. Got to clear everything out. We have 2 3 home run games, one by Frank Robinson and one by Heavy Johnson. So we've had 2 of those. Is there a 6 RBI game? Wow. Yes. 7 RBI games. So here's the leader so far. Willie Wells knocked in 7 in this game right here in a big win over Hawaii. So anyway, I don't get into this tool at all. So this is kind of fun. Beals is like, I forgot about this tool. Yeah, me too. That's why I like doing some of these, because everybody thinks I'm helping them out. And I end up reminding myself of stuff and learning things or learning new stuff too. D. Scott likes right. Yeah, he's got a couple one hitters for you. That's pretty impressive. So this is a fun tool here. Go look at box scores. Another league one we can look at that's always cool is the voting. It always has the all-stars. Oh, we don't really have both leagues, but here we go. You can kind of see the voting. It's interesting. And look at this. Wright, your Jay Wright for North Sound here is second in all-star voting to Three Finger Brown. Bench and Piazza neck and neck for catcher. McGuire at first. You can kind of see how it stacks up with the all-star voting and we do have a DH in this league because it's so deep with players. But you'll see here, that's where the leading vote getters show up right here on this snapshot on the front screen. So it's been a fun league for anybody that's in it or anybody that's been following it along on some of the broadcasts. But I think for a lot of us, the draft is as much fun or more than actually playing out the league, but both have been fun. And as somebody mentioned a little bit earlier on Beatles broadcast, it's fun because we're getting to explore a lot of players that some of us never heard about. And it's a learning process, right? A little bit of history. Now look at the score sheet, uses the format of Howard. Yeah, let's take a look at, let's pull one of those up. The cool thing, like if we're looking at Hawaii here and go to the box scores, this is another thing I like. You go to the box scores and look back at all the games. Let's look at this one specifically and score sheet for Hawaii. So I wasn't familiar with that, John, but saying it uses the same format of how we used to enter that, which is cool. And we can scroll down over here and see, kind of shows what at bat they were in and out at. The game film. So now we're in a league plan. So you'll notice this is the play-by-play pretty much as what happened as far as the play result goes in the game, what the count was, so on. But then game film, that's the actual description, the text description that presents itself. So this is basically a text film version of what happened. So you could go back and almost, I think about when they used to do the after the fact audio broadcast. You could actually come in here, pull this up, and use this as a guide and do an audio broadcast. Oh, that's pretty cool, John. That's something that's geeky stuff I would have loved doing, that kind of stuff, because I have as much fun. I've played a lot more this year. Doing the beta testing has helped me get into the game more because I got into so much homebrew. I would have so much fun homebrewing and creating teams. Then I'd have to remember, hey, when am I going to play the game? So this year it's been good because I played more games. I got back into head to head with Beatles. We've got some of the functions I hadn't used before with the draft because we're doing a league. And I still got to have fun doing the pictures and cards and all that good stuff. So yeah, a lot of good stuff here in this game to help. But now I have a suggestion. So I'm going to take what Greg brought up on the percentages and say, hey, what if we had a tab here? We've got one to show batting versus left and right to help you pick. But what if we had another tab that shows basically um, their full line here with percentages? Because it's giving you the basics here, but you don't even get to see doubles or triples. You'd almost have to click on the player card to get that. Or maybe it's an option where, that's another tab on the player card. But anyway, it's a good suggestion. This guy took off like gangbusters in the league. So here's another cool thing. We can look back. We can look back at April and then on into May where he took off hot. And then he cooled off in June, got a little better in July, and now he's on fire in August. So that's another fun thing when you look back on the league. You can kind of see what was going on with a player. And something that we've talked about but haven't messed with a lot. When you're playing the game, you can always look at Juan Soto and say, hey, I know how he's rated. I know his line is this kind of a batting average. Here's his OPS. Here's what we think he'll do. The other cool thing about action is if I go to, oh, wrong one, it's rules. Go to my rules. I can choose quick setup. So if I want to quick set up a league, I can hit some of these universal selections. No transactions, major transactions, whatever. Or as played, meaning if you buy a season from them, it's going to have like the as played starting lineups. So if you want to do that, you can do it. But alternate reality mode, very intriguing because it's going to take them and keep them the same or bump them up or down a little bit. So in other words, it shuts off all the analysis tools. And like in real life as a manager, you're going to have to watch them and you might end up benching a person. If you've got a guy that's a 330 hitter, you're never going to put in a 250 hitter if he's doing bad because the game bases him off that 350 chance. But when you turn on alternate reality mode, you don't have that. You don't know under the hood if he's really a 300 hitter or maybe he's a 320 or maybe he's a 280. So they do a little bit of randomizing with that. So I haven't done I think I ran one of our tests with alternate reality when we had first drafted the league, but I have not played around with that. And that's another cool thing that exists in all the action games that I haven't even played with, but that's really cool for a different take on how to play a league out or to manage because you're doing it blind. Very realistic, right? You don't know if your 300 hitter is going to bat 320 or if he's going to be at bat 280. You don't know how the game has adjusted his player card up or down or kept it the same. Fun, fun. What else? Anybody else have any questions? Heck, we've got 6 people still hanging out here. It's 11:40 my time, Mountain Time. But I love all the games. So Nathaniel here, if he's still hanging around, got to buy the game, man. I mean, it's some of the most fun I've had. And again, I'm all for buying whatever games you want, but this is a must own to me if this kind of stuff appeals to you. I think. Oh, he's here. I think. Beatles does a lot of different games on his channel, which is good because they all fit the bill, right? I mean, Out of the Park has its own appeal. MLB The Show is cool. I mean, the graphics are awesome. You get some of the legend teams, right? There's fun stuff there. Baseball for Windows, nostalgia. You've got the nice voice of Ernie Harwell, but action's its own thing. So I'm an all of the above person. If you can afford it and you've got the budget, get them all. And then I think Beatles is a great example of somebody that he's moving around constantly, firing up whatever game he happens to want to fire up that day, or whatever era or project, right? So it's the variety. But I think he would agree with me. You got to have this one. It's fun stuff. And it can seem really, I think, intimidating because of all the options. And people are like, okay, well, I got the game, but now how do I set up my pictures? How do I get my ballparks? There is some work there to get them in the right folders, but I think once you get them there, the game's so much more enjoyable when you set that up. Um, and I know Beatles and MV are the same way. You know, they're particular. They want to set the game up and get their pictures. And I know Beatles, like I'll play with the pictures on the field. He won't, right? Because you have the option. I've noticed that he'll have the pictures up so you can see them, but he doesn't have them on the fielders because it can get a little cluttered, or some people like the look. So you have a lot of customizing, but you do have to decide when you get it, okay, let me get my photos the way I want them. Um, I got into, I guess, probably about 8, 9 years ago when I finally decided, hey, I'm going to start making my own card style, right? I think Mark Weiss, who SimMark is his handle on the action forums, he had the King of Diamonds League, and he started doing a lot of that. And I said, hey, what are you using? And he turned me on to this Snagit. And that's when I started messing around with, hey, let me create some baseball card style photos, because that's what got me into the love of sports when I was 6 years old. Was collecting baseball cards and looking at the stats on the back and trying to figure out my own games with the numbers on the back and do all kinds of cool stuff in it. So I've found that not only do I love the number crunching and creating some of the what if and editing players, now I feel like, hey, I'm creating my own cards and I can use them in the game to dress it up. And what I've noticed is a lot of the packs um, that you can download are very, headshot. They just grab them and go, and trim them, right? And I have a lot of nostalgia for the old baseball cards. So if you look at the ones I do, like in here, I'm looking for more of a what I call a baseball card style. Maybe it's a headshot that's on there. I've got into colorizing some of the older photos just to make them look good, but more of showing more of the uniform, or maybe even an action photo. And what I'm trying to do for all of the projects is not just have one photo. And I'll give you an example. Let's talk about photos. So you load photos, and remember I told you about the subfolder. So we've got our league file, and you can see the photos that I've got here. You see the style of them, I guess. I used a American or National League, kind of not team colors or anything, but just more of an all-time greats type of logo. And what I did is try to have 3 or 4 pictures, if possible, different ones so people could use. So how do you assign them in the game? Well, I use the naming format where it's first name underscore last name. So if I pull up a file, I go to roster tools, player photos, nicknames, and uniforms. This is a great tab, by the way, because I can go player by player if I want to update their uniform number and nickname. This is the best screen to just go right through here and get that all done. What do we got? So right over here is where if you had player photos sitting in the right folder, you could come over here, whatever your naming convention is for the photos you've saved. I always go first underscore last. I've always used that. But if you'll notice here, it defaults to that one. So let's look at Johnny Antonelli, okay? But I've got 2 options. So it will auto assign because I selected this when I first set it up. But I can come over, if I don't like that picture, I'll go, oh, I got a second one here. I want to use that photo. Mark Belanger. What's his second one look like? Oh, hey, let's use that one. Same thing. So for some of these pictures, for our league, I didn't go as in-depth as I usually do because I was quickly trying to get some pictures. Here's Oscar Charleston, but there's some other photos I have for him. I could use that one. So it's really easy once you get the photos in there. If you have multiple options like I do, it's pretty easy if you just go into that team, pull up this player photo, and it does a good job of giving you all the available photos, but it's going to look at the name. And if there's like a 2 or a 3 or a 4 option or whatever, some of these might have several. Let's see. Lajoie's got that one, but we could also go with this one. Why not, right? So I find it interesting to me to have the options. I'm an options person. I love eating at the buffet. So what I like to do is give 3, 4, maybe more options for photos for people to enjoy in the game. These I'm only doing maybe 1 or 2 because I was pressed for time and we're trying to get, once we had our draft done and we know who's in it, I was creating a lot of these cards to get them in the game. So some of them I already had done, but like, here's Al Rosen, there's 2 pictures for him. But if we go to, let me go to my franchise file and I'll show you. I used a different format for them. I was doing era, color, team logo specific. Let's see where we're going with this. Wrong one. Hold on, it's grinding. Okay. Go to 5-year franchise teams, and I start looking at some of the rosters I have. Let's say Detroit. You'll notice if I go under player photos, nicknames, let's take a look. I'll have a few. So yeah, here's da, da. Oh, it's looking at my general file. Look, I'm outsmarting myself right here. Let me show you in the basketball game. Same kind of concept. What I'm doing here is for some of the players where I've built and I've got the teams in here, like here's Julius Erving. If I go into my player photos, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Maybe 6 pictures for Irving. So I can pick whichever. I can go default. I go default names, and if they're there, right, it's given me the very first, the basic name. But then if I want a different photo, I can pick it. So for my all-time greats, if they played for different teams, I'm just trying to get a variation for people. So when I have this file out there, they can pick whatever. They have some options on the photo. There's Andrew Toney. I've only got 3 for him. So another cool thing, I haven't done it, but somebody told me they did, is check this out. Some of the people that want a player card, I can print player cards. So if you've got some card stock here, you can go small or you can go this larger one here. I can put their real or their replay statistics on there. And then I can select all the players I want and I can print cards. So you think about cards and dice folks that want to have like an actual card of the player. I haven't printed one out to see what they look like how the layout is, because it's going to take their photo um, and data and make a card out of it. In fact, I ought to try that tomorrow. I keep saying I'm going to do that, but I never have. Beetle says he's done it and they look cool. Yeah, so if you wanted to create like, what are they? I guess 2-inch by 3.5-inch cards or 5.5 by 4.25. There you go. I think those are probably some common ones that some of these cards and dice games do. That's something to play with. So anyway, fun times, fun games. I have all their games. I have hockey. I have football, basketball, baseball, and golf. Don't know if there's any hockey fans. Let me just fire this one up for a minute. This is one that I started about a year ago. Oh my gosh. I've downloaded the hockey. You know what's happened here? It's not finding. Oh, it's my new computer. I've got to go over here and delete. It's looking for a recent list of seasons, and I'm going to have to delete that. Yeah, so I have all the games, love them. They're all very similar. Some have their own nuance to them, but as each version comes out with something cool, it's typically in the next game. The cool thing you're going to start seeing with all of them are these user mods they have now, which are player photo assignments where you can import them from past seasons. You can install user image zip files. Like if you had all kinds of zip files already saved for like a season, you could bulk import them. You have colors and like team reference mods where you could set up certain years and certain teams to have their home color, road color, and all that kind of good stuff. So they've got some what I call custom like user mods that allow you to export and bring things in. And you can import managers, games, all kinds of good stuff, historical team colors. This user created spreadsheet you can print out and then do manual data like I do and import it to create players. It's extremely big and has a lot of fields, and I'm like an old dog. I know how to go in and edit and import players edit, and I know how to create them from scratch the old way. I've never spent the time to convert my sheets over to the format that would match their sheet to save me time to import it. So, and I've never spent the time to try to make that sheet work for me to be more efficient. So that's something on my plate. Maybe I'll get to someday. So cool. D. Scott Howard does the Hawking. He's looking forward to the files. Good. And I think D. Scott's also a basketball fan, if I'm not mistaken. So with that, gosh, how long have we gone here? Oh, we're over 2 hours. Who knew? Time flew. Hopefully this is helpful. Um, I've got several videos on there for Nathaniel and whoever wants to look at it where I've covered some of the gameplay tutorials. You can feel free to look through um, my YouTube site there and see if something's helpful, or just ping me and let me know if there's something that you'd like to see or have a question about, because it helps me dig into the game more, and then I'm remembering stuff or learning brand new things like I do all the time on some of the features. This year, being a beta tester, actually, I started paying attention to features that have been there for a few years that I'd never used. It's crazy. Um, yeah, that's about it. Yeah, it's been fun as usual. You know, I love the basketball files. Well, you know what, D. Scott? Let me highlight that. So, any of you, I do have, oh, kicking the wrong button to go to season here. Basketball 5-year franchise files. Haven't done any work on these, but haven't even organized these into like logical breakdowns for divisions. But I've created a bunch of 5-year franchise basketball teams with the same criteria. Player had to play, take their best 2 straight years during that 5-year run and card them. I've even got some ABA teams in here, which is interesting. So here's the Kentucky Colonels with Artis Gilmore, Dan Issel. Got an Indiana team. I even got a Utah Stars team on here. And I've been doing pretty good on keeping up with the player photo packs for those. I don't have the other Bulls team. I got the 93 to 97 team. I don't have I think it's 88 to 92 team I was going to build. Got a good Cincinnati team here with Oscar Robertson on it. Let's take a look what I've got for them. So let's look up a Boston team here. I always use Boston as a demo. Player photo. So we go to player photos, and you can see here, like on this file right here. So here's Danny Ainge. I've got 5 photos here for Boston, and then I've got other photos when he's on the Phoenix because he's going to be on that Phoenix team as well. So I'll just put like an identifier afterwards. Got Nate Tiny Archibald here. So you can see on this league, I'm trying to give anywhere from 3 to 6 photo options for players. So anyway, yeah, I love this stuff. Yeah, let me know if there's anything or comment on there if there's something you want to see, Nathaniel. And yeah, welcome to the club. It's an addiction. Most unbelievable team in history of sports from day one is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah, for a new franchise, I don't know if anybody's ever been that good that early. I mean, I'm thinking, remember Jacksonville in football? They got decent. I mean, they never won anything, but trying to remember, I had a friend of mine who was a Jacksonville fan that they got in a few years got competitive. But yeah, but the Vegas Golden Knights have been really good from the start. Seeing what other teams. I don't have too many new teams. I think I have this Golden State team from 14 to 18 with Steph Curry. Let's take a look at the other cool thing when you get a file where you have all these greats on it is to see how they have them rated. So you can see Chamberlain here for the 2 years he's with the Warriors, high league. But let's take a look at reports league top salaries, top player salaries. And there you go. You got Michael Jordan at 34 million, LeBron James. So that just gives you kind of, I don't know how the game does that, but it looks at um, the overall player ratings and assigns it an equitable, I guess, salary for it. But this is a cool way to kind of look at overall players and their ratings. They have ratings that are just there for window dressing too. Like we click on Chamberlain, we'll see where is his overall rating 7.9. The games era adjusted right here. This is what I love. All the games have this where you can start looking at it in the right context. So if you look at how many points, he's 182% era adjusted. I mean, he scores a lot, right? Free throw percentage, yeah, he's 100 being the average, right? So you can kind of look based on their era where they're at in these categories. Uses a lot of the typical basketball advanced statistics where with per and Tendex, which was preceded per, but Tendex is a pretty good sign as well. That's fun stuff to look at for me. Messi salary. There is a game that, look, I got a granddaughter that's playing at Holy Cross at Notre Dame playing soccer. And because of her, I've started to, well, enjoy soccer more. I wouldn't say I'm a fan at all, but I know that's one game that has come up when people on the forums have been asking, what's the next action game? And I heard an interview that Dave Gardner and Ron Juckett did on Digital to Dice about a year and a half ago with Dave Cook from Action. And his whole thing is they just have to have somebody in the office that would be passionate to create it, right? And they just don't know what that would be. But I know a lot of people have requested soccer. But like he said, it just takes somebody to be super passionate, knowledgeable about it to dig in and start putting it together. But that would be interesting. So we've looked at game prices, all kinds of goodies tonight. And oh, I'm gonna share another little thing. They don't have it anymore. Thank God I had an old copy of this. I love this thing. Has anybody ever used this database right here? One of my favorites. It's the B-Ball Sports databases. Um, yeah, it would be an oxymoron. Uh, this is wonderful, man. So let's reset it. This has a database of everything. So I could go over here and say, what do I want? Well, I want baseball batters. What is going on? Oh, I'll probably have to restart this. Let me see what we got here. So I had this super database that has all the sports. I went to the B-ball site or whatever. I couldn't download it. I don't think it's available anymore. And this might be updated to like 2018 or something. But I love this thing as a resource because it gave me information. I used to like to look at how many disqualifications, like as a stat line for basketball in the game. The other sites did not have it. Not that it really matters in gameplay, but I'm a stickler for trying to have all the data I can. And they did not have it. So I'm like, well, this site carries it. It's also another resource when I'm selecting the positions that they play in basketball. So let's say here, I can go to data, I can go basketball players, load them all, and then I can just go select player. And I can just pick one. So here we go. What am I looking at? Allen Iverson right here. Click on him, and then I get all of his data right here. And playoffs or whatever. But it's also another indication to figure out what positions they played mainly that year. And I love this site because I could come over here and get how many disqualifications. You can see some years they weren't tracking it. But this was one of my go-to resources, this B-ball site. And let's see. What other database? Let's go. Oh, football players. When I was carding people, the other thing is like punt return information, and for some of the seasons, this was great where I could go and let's say I wanted to select a player who's a kicker. Let's get Rafael Septien. I know is a kicker. Right here he is. Boom. So I could click on him, and then I knew that I could get some really cool data over here, like when we're talking about his kicking numbers right here, his field goals, like how many field goals he made and attempted at the different yardage, what his longest one was, all that kind of cool stuff. So if anybody's in there doing home brewing or whatever, I think you can get a lot of these on other sites now, but I always love this B-Ball Sports database for looking things up. Let's look at baseball batters. I don't think I've ever used it for baseball. And let's select a player. How about Mitchell Page from the A's? And there you go. I'll tell you the positions he played. Looks pretty basic. Nothing special about splits or anything like that. Guess I could figure out how to sort it a little bit better. But yeah, so just giving little tip on another resource I've used, but I use it for a couple things, and I'm like, hey, I found it on my old PC because I went to that B-Ball Sports site and it's not there anymore. So baseball and the sports references are what I use for about everything now. And it's where I live. So I'm going to wrap it up. It's about 6 minutes after midnight here. Enjoyed it. Welcome those of you that are just getting into action. And if you haven't got it, why not? Go get it. And I think you'll enjoy it. And I'm happy to help out, like as is Beatles. Anybody when it comes to getting the game set up or answering questions or sharing any homebrew files or whatever I've got that you might find enjoyable. Happy to help. So I think there's going to be a head-to-head. I'm going to wait and let Beatles ping me on Discord tomorrow evening. I could be open to that Sunday afternoon or evening. So you let me know what your schedule's like, Beatles, and we'll get some head-to-head game going. And then maybe people can tune in and check out some head-to-head if they haven't seen it before. But that's its own thing that's just a blast. So I'll say see you down the road, and it's been a fun night and enjoyed it.